Yeah. That's wild. All right. Good God Almighty. What we got here? Don't fucking get hooked on that thing. The grind continues eternally. What is this? Day 4. I'm sure the stream says day 3, but I couldn't figure out how to adjust that motherfucker. All right, so let's do a test. All right, restream. Okay, cool. So yeah, I can see chats on this motherfucker. And well, that's definitely out of place. Hold up. Yeah, sorry, we were just in danger of are you fucking serious, chair? Yeah, we were in danger of breaking into Le Epic Gaming there on a moment's notice. All right, what are we at here? Let me see. Oh wow, this is a hectic chapter. I almost feel like we should edit that one again, but we're not going to. Not in the fucking slightest, right there. So good morning to I think I see Jordan O up in the chat. Indeed I do, and I see Spathy Wah. So the early AM can't get to sleep crew is happening. Today I'm drinking this teeny little can that purports to be espresso. That is nitrogen infused. I have never had this drink before in my goddamn life. So when you started, we had edited 0 pages. Now we have edited fucking 34. If only everything else in life were this easy. Ugh. So it's raining here in New York City. Pretty hardcore. And hold on, I'm gonna fix this fucking chair. This is driving me batshit. Yeah, so from where I sit, I can kind of see like the YouTube chat and everything. I wonder, can I fucking take a picture of this without doxing myself? Hold up, yeah, this is kind of wild. Actually, if I was getting really fucking crazy with it, I could, let me see. Oh God, this room is such a fucking mess. But yeah, if I was really getting crazy with it, I could give a live feed of the cell phone over like a NewTek NDI feed, just as I'm like walking around the room, and give people a tour of how fucking cluttered the studio is. I'll probably just clean it up first. All right, we'll down the hatch. Let me see how this nitrogen infused espresso is all about. There ain't nothing wrong with that. That's perfect. Completely innocuous. Not too harsh. It's legit. It's on hit legit and on parole. All right. Let me get my mind right here. Yeah, I feel like I just woke up. So sometimes if I'm feeling kind of like froggy, um, I will, what'd you call it? I'll fucking edit back a little bit just until my brain starts working correctly. It's definitely not at the moment. I'm like working on half a fucking cylinder, flying over the Atlantic with just one engine going. All right, so is that a coffee emoji or a ramen emoji? It looks like coffee. Thank you, Jordan. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, I can't fucking function as a human being without my coffee. But I definitely drink coffee every fucking morning. Okay. So the calendar was marked with Randall's handwriting in black marker. Anniversary was written on October 9th with 3 circles around it. Anniversary was written on October 9th. The square was circled 3 times. That'll be fantastic for our WWE fans. Lassa birthday was circled on January 3rd. Freya birthday with a heart around it on May 23rd. Her eyes began to get wet. Freya, first day of school, September 9th. Vacation, Maldives, written over Christmas break. I don't think break is capitalized there, but it looks weird to have Christmas capitalized and break not. Solar eclipse was Freya, was written just a few weeks after he died. She remembered Randall telling her about it. He wanted to drive up to Kearsarge North and hike up to the fire tower for the spectacular view. With a sinking feeling, Freya recalled she'd been a little bitchy about losing a Saturday. At least she had agreed to go. She had completely forgotten about that until now, the hike they never took. She clutched the case tightly. Tears were running down her face. Her eyes sought today's date, November 4th. Another circle. Torrids with Freya was written there. Her mouth moved. Those were some of her favorite times with Randall. They stayed out late and brought sandwiches and hot soup in a thermos. He would smoke a cigar while they waited, after extracting a promise she wouldn't tell her mother. She could still remember the smell of tobacco, sweet and potent. There was another black case on the other side of the shelf. She returned the one she held and pulled down the other. She threw... Oh, yeah, this needs to change. Oh, yeah. There was another back case on the other side. There was another black case. There was another black case on the other side of the shelf. She returned the one she held and pulled down the other. Then she slid the coats back in place so the secret calendar was hidden again. There was another black case on the other side of the shelf. Freya returned the one she held and pulled down the other. Then she slid the coats back in place so the secret calendar was hidden again. All right. Yeah, I can feel my brain coming to life right here. I got a little cold happening and everything. Good Lord. It was like open to I went SoFar.net. Oh, I want to listen to Game Boy music whilst I'm doing that. Yeah, just YouTube is real fucking bitchy about flagging everything that I'm trying to play here. It's kind of annoying actually, but yeah. So I was talking with people yesterday. If this blows up and we have like 10,000 viewers like every fucking day or something like that, which is possible but unlikely, I'm going to hire a piano player and get a fucking baby grand brought in here to the studio and have somebody play piano in accompaniment to this writing. Literally have a fucking piano player improvising the whole time that we're doing this. I don't know why, but that's the goal, right? You got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? So, yeah, like, Jorno, what do you think is going to happen to Freya next? What's in that case that she pulled down? Let's see. What is that? Restream. Okay, chat ready to display messages. Well, you're going to find out one way or the other there. All right. Freya's bicycle was in the garage. There was a thick coating of... There was a thick coating of dust on Freya's bicycle and everything else. The garage was Randall's place. There was kind of an unspoken agreement that Lasso wouldn't bother him while he was in there, and it had gone on even after he died. There was the red tool chest. Wait, what do we got here? No, you had to switch from 160p to 360p to read. Wow. That's true dedication. 360p. You know, this is in 1080p. You're not even getting a quarter of the P's that are available. No, I guess that's not quite true. But, oh, yeah. Like, I just wondered if you had any guesses as to where this story was going next. But, yeah, that's a struggle right there. Not getting any kind of fucking resolution off of old YouTube. You guys on, like, windmill powered Quest dial-up or some shit like that? All right, there was a thick coating of dust on Freya's bicycle and everything else in the garage. There was a thick coating of dust on Freya's bicycle and everything else. The garage was Randall's place. There was an unspoken agreement. Yeah, we don't need kind of. Every time you see kind of in this story, you can just delete it. Just like that. Like almost every time you see the word that, you can just delete it. Just like that. You know, this is how we get our word count down. Hell yeah. And I'm paying like not like a cent a word, but like definitely some fraction of a cent per word. So we're saving ourselves like pieces of a penny every time we cut out bullshit. Hell yeah. I'm getting rich to this. The garage was Randall's place. There was an unspoken agreement that Lasso wouldn't bother him while he was in here, and it had gone on even after he died. We don't need that comma. There was the red tool chest on wheels, his free weights, an ancient BZB book laptop that he played old computer games on. Shots. So, shoutouts to the BZB book. Some of y'all listening will know what the BZB book is all about. Some of y'all will not. But that's okay. Not everybody needs to know what's being referenced at all points here. You know, shoutouts to the BZB book. Trinary computing operating system. Shit is so state of the art. Yeah, so they are computer games. So like really what I want to say is that he just plays fucking Civilization all the time on this laptop. But I don't know, it might get too niche. There was the red tool chest on wheels, his free rates, an ancient BZB laptop that he played old video games on. His telescope was there under its drop cloth. The bicycles were there too, hanging on hooks in the wall. Randall had been far less organized than Lassa, and the garage had a comfortable, cluttered feel to it. I don't know if they're... Randall had been far less organized than Lassa, and the garage had a comfortable, cluttered feel to it. Also, if you're listening, what do we got right there? Next gen. Oh, shoutouts to Queef Quarter there. in the fucking YouTube chat. It's not not even a half queef, just a quarter of a queef. It's like don't like eyes got wet. How about something else brimming over, welling up? Where did eyes get wet? Oh yeah, that does have like the connotation that her eyes are sexually aroused. I don't even know where the fuck that is. If you're reading ahead, I'm not there. So yeah, I need some help there. I feel you on eyes got wet, but we got to move ahead. We want to get this chapter done this morning. I'm not sure if this is a long one or a short one, but it's got to happen. There was a red tool chest on wheels, his free rates, an ancient BZB laptop that he played video, and the ancient BZB book laptop that he played old video games on. His telescope was there under its drop cloth. Their bicycles hung on hooks on the wall. It's a big-ass garage, man. Their bicycles hung on hooks in the wall. Randall had been far less organized than Lassa, and the garage had a comfortable, cluttered feel to it. Freya took her bicycle down. Both the tires needed air, and she pumped them up with a hand pump so she didn't need to turn on the compressor. She took Randall's bike off the wall and pumped up his tires, too. She didn't understand why she'd done it, but it made her feel a little better. She left Lassa's bike alone. Yeah, they do make hand pumps. I mean, it's just like a stand pump. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, the one that looks like a dynamite fucking plunger or whatever? Just in comparison to having a compressor there. Honestly, it's fucking totally unnecessary to have the pump them up with the hand pump so she didn't have to turn on the compressor. But yeah, they also make like those little things that like clip to the the bottom bar of the bicycle. And there's like this little tiny thing for faggots and spandex that are like going long distance, going for speed, all alone in their time of need. You know what I'm fucking saying here. But she left Lassa's bike alone. Okay, so I think he has a pickup truck. There's a faint smell of oil from his tan pickup truck. Their bicycles hung on hooks on the wall. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he's got an old pickup truck. I think it pops up later in the story. Tan Cybertruck. Hell yeah. All right, we can fucking do that. I mean, it is going to be 2024 at that point. Like, people might have gotten deliveries of their Cybertrucks. And as you'll find out later, he's the kind of guy who would buy a fucking Cybertruck. Randall was a G. Yeah, it's kind of a shitty. So oh, what I want here is nice. Now it's Back to the Future rather than whatever there. It was too cold outside for the jacket she had on, but it wouldn't matter soon. She realized she was leaving without a helmet, and she told herself she didn't need one where she was going. But Randall had always insisted on helmets. She wound up turning back around in the driveway to grab hers off the wall. It was stupid how she still couldn't shake that off. Listen, darling. The clouds were in a thick overhead. The clouds were thick overhead, and she wondered if she ought to just leave the case. Yeah, exactly. Quafer. Like, real talk. That's exactly what I'm getting at there. And it's true. She's not going to need wheels where she's fucking going here. The clouds were thick overhead. So this is where really we should establish what phase of the moon it is, because that should track throughout the rest of the book. It's definitely one of the notes in here, just keeping track of where the moon is at. Clouds were thick overhead. Yeah, we don't want to get too into what they are. The clouds were thick overhead, and Freya wondered if she should even bother to bring the case. Here and there she could see stars shining through rents in the sky. She slung the case behind her and shot down the driveway, then began to bike up the long hill. North River Road. Yeah. She slung the case behind her and shot down the driveway, then began to bike north up River Road. The oil had dried up on her shifters, and they clacked loudly as she changed gears to get up the long hill. There wasn't much of a shoulder on the road in places, and she felt nervous as cars whipped around her in the night. Okay. There wasn't much of a shoulder on the road, and she felt nervous as cars whipped around her in the night. But again, wasn't that a stupid thing to worry about? The air smelled like damp leaves and wood smoke, and she pedaled harder to stay warm. Let me see. The air smelled like damp leaves and wood smoke, and she pedaled harder to stay warm. She regretted not bringing a heavier jacket. As she climbed up the hill and the moon broke through the clouds. She climbed up the hill and the moon broke through the clouds. At the summit, she could see 3 deer standing in the middle of the road looking at her. At the apex. Oh, what do we want? We want apex or summer there. I'm going to go with apex. At the apex, she could see 3 deer standing in the middle of the road looking down at her. One was a stag, and she could make out the outline of his antlers in the moonlight. As she got closer, the 3 sprang across the road and disappeared into the woods. She could hear them bouncing away in the crackling leaves. High beams shot ahead of her, and a truck came roaring behind her. High beams cast her shadow far ahead of her. High beams cast her shadow far ahead of her. A truck came roaring behind her. Her whole body jolted with surprise. Music was booming out of the open windows. Let's make it rap music. No. I mean, what are the odds that somebody's listening to fucking rap music on a like fucking backwoods road in Maine at 7 o'clock on a fucking November 4th, 2024? Really and truly, I want to know. All right, help me out here, squad. What's some like really annoying fucking music that could be coming out of this pickup truck? Like I just say twang was coming out of fucking twang. I wonder if they're far enough north that they could get like French music from the Quebecois. I don't know. Cock rock music. Is that a genre? Fucking cock rock? Yeah, we could just have fucking Metallica booming out of there. I don't know. I think Metallica comes up somewhere later, right here. Yeah, what the fuck is coming out of your window when you're screaming at like a 16-year-old girl and like honking at her or whatever? Was it like talk radio? Dubstep reggae? Inexplicable reggae music was booming out of open windows. It's awful. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they do. Listen to. I'm sure that they just listen to the sound of men getting raped to death by bears set to like an orchestral score. I mean, what the fuck else is so let's not all right, let's just do country music. Country music was booming out of open windows, and she could hear laughter as they. Yeah. Assholes. She hoped they got in a wreck. It was stupid to be out here on her own. If a cop saw her riding a bike at this time of night, he would definitely stop her. But what could a cop do? It was a free country. If she wanted to ride her bike at night, she could do that, no matter how dumb it was. She ran through the confrontation in her mind, but it didn't matter. No one stopped her. The bike rocketed down the hill and the trees whipped past. The bike rocketed down the other side of the hill and the trees whipped past. Yeah, the other side of the hill's not right there. Yeah, country music is like the go-to thing there, but oh shit. What is fucking Effie doing in Pound LRH? That motherfucker doesn't belong there. Freaking creepy foot fag autismo. All right, what else we have here? Let's see. She hoped they got in a wreck. It was stupid to be out here on her own. She hoped they got in a wreck. Okay. Yeah, so there. It was stupid. It was stupid to be out here on her own. If a cop saw her riding at this time of night, he would definitely stop her. But what could a cop do? Yeah, this is like clunky. A lot of this can get if a cop saw her out at this time of night, he would definitely stop her. But what could a cop do? It was a free country. If she wanted to ride her bike at night, she could do that, no matter how dumb it was. She ran through the confrontation in her mind, but it didn't matter. No one stopped her. They were listening to Free Country. Oh, hell yeah. Wait, what song would there's got to be like the perfect fucking song to have blaring out of that thing. Let's try to think of it at some point like that. But yeah, we'll just here, hold on, let me comment that. I'd love to have it be like all my exes are different sexes, or all my exes live in Texas. But I don't want to derail the whole fucking story here, just to be funny. It was stupid to be out here on our own. If a cop saw her at this, But what could they do? It was a free country. If she wanted to ride her bike at night, she could do that, no matter how dumb it was. She ran through the confrontation in her mind until she was over the hill, and then she had to focus on the steep decline. There were clumps of wet leaves sticking to the road. Crashing a bike at 30 miles an hour was anything but a painless death. Yeah, see? Oh, I like this. Yeah. Ugh. Let's see there. Just let go, she urged herself. But she got scared, and a second later her dusty brakes were squealing in the night. I think it has to be another paragraph, if we're doing like an italicized thought thing. She almost missed the turnoff for the picnic trail, and she had to stop short because there was a chain thrown between two posts. If not for the moonlight, she would have missed it and gone flying. It was dark enough on the trail that she got off her bike and walked it. The path was muddy, and her shoe... Okay. Just let go, she urged herself, but she got scared, and a second later her dusty brakes were squealing into the night. She nearly missed the turnoff for the picnic trail, and she had to stop short. The park was closed, and there was a chain hanging between two concrete posts. If not for the moonlight, she would have crashed into it and gone flying. Instead, she got off her bike and walked it down the trail. The path was muddy, and her shoes squelched, and her tires made a sound like a paint roller on the wet ground. Hell yeah. Yeah, I can picture that shit right there. Okay, so the song option. What are those songs? I can't click on those YouTube links in the chat, Spathywa. Oh well, I could take calls during editing or something like that, or I could just fucking hop into I could hop into an LRH channel where people could say shit, but I think it would be more distracting than it's worth. All right, what's our time at right now? All right, it's 6:57. So every hour on the hour, I'm gonna take a brief break and just rest my fucking eyes, and I think I'll be able to edit for like a little bit longer if I do that. So we're gonna take like 3 or 4 minutes. Just enjoy yourselves, and I'm gonna click on Spathiwa's links and see what these are all about. Is it really? There's no cock like horse cock. Yeah, I don't think that quite fits the tenor of what we're trying to do here, but I could be wrong. All right. Oh, well, shit. Like, I'm gonna take myself off of this fucking 5-minute break. There's no cock like horse cock. Yeah, and music is a big fuck. I can't believe I did this shit again. Stay. Stay. You fucking gamer throne. Get the fuck out of there. Check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2. Yeah, how's our? I guess our audio volume looks okay from here, but yeah, like definitely my eyes get tired working on this more so than they normally would. Like normally when I'm writing, my eyes don't get tired, but and maybe something about having like screens off in the distance that my eyes are trying to focus on or whatever. But yeah, after about an hour or so of this, I definitely need to take an eye break. So yeah, we'll have to see what it's all about. Instead, she got off her bike and walked it down the trail. The path was muddy and her shoes squelched. The path was muddy down the muddy trail. Her shoes squelched and the tires made a sound like a paint roller. Her shoes squelched and the bike tires made a sound like a paint roller on the wet ground. She really should have brought the parka. The clouds drifted over the moon again, and suddenly it was pitch black on the trail. It never seemed like a far walk during the day, but at night the footing... She really should have brought the parka. The clouds drifted over the moon again, and suddenly it was pitch black on the trail. It never seemed like a long walk during the day, but it felt like forever in the night. She rolled her ankle on a big rock and caught herself against the bike. She rolled her ankle on a big rock and caught herself against the bike. It stung a little, but she took a few hesitant steps. But she took a few ginger steps and decided she could walk it off. Okay. She really should have brought the parka. The clouds drifted over the moon again, and suddenly it was pitch black on the trail. It never seemed like a long walk during the day, but it felt like forever in the dark. She rolled her ankle on a big rock and caught herself against the bike. It stung, but she took a few ginger steps and decided she could walk it off. She was surprised to find she wasn't afraid. She was blundering in the dark in the middle of the woods, alone at night, and she felt an electric sense of adventure. It was just a little park by the river. She'd been here 100 times, but never at night, never in the dark on her own, and there was a sense that anything could happen. She could hear the sound of the river getting louder as she walked. It was swollen with the rain. There was a picnic clearing. At the clearing by the river, she leaned her bike against one of the concrete At the clearing by the river, she leaned her bike against one of the concrete picnic tables and took off her helmet. It had stopped raining, but there were still pools of water on the table, and she flicked the cold water with her hand. Hmm. There were still pools of cold water on the table, and she flicked them off with her hand before. There were pools of cold water on the table, and she flicked them off with her hand before she set the case down. The moon had slipped out of the clouds again, and it was bright, almost full. Edit 2, phase of moon. Okay. Yeah, there will be, I want to say about 8 or 9 different instances where the phase of the moon will be important. Honestly, like people reading a book, the vast majority are not going to care in any way whatsoever if like the phase of the moon tracks. I mean, maybe they'll care if it's like full one day and a new moon the next day, and somebody's carved swastika into it the next day. But yeah, most people are not going to give a shit. But I mean, if you're editing and you want a story to feel real, all that little persnickety shit does matter. She undid the clasp and took out Randall's Celestron binoculars. They were 20 by 70 millimeter, far larger than they were 20 by 70 millimeter, far larger than normal binoculars, and designed for exactly this. She looked at the moon first, an old friend. There was Tycho and Kepler and Copernicus. She knew all the big craters, and then the seas of cold and tranquility and nectar. There were too many seas to remember them all, but she remembered most. There were too many seas to know them all, but she remembered most. Taurus was hidden behind the clouds, and she peered at where she thought it ought to be and lowered the binoculars. The Taurids weren't as spectacular as the Perseids, which she'd missed this year, especially since the moon. Oh, yeah. Still, the moon was bright, trying to steal the show. Still, it would be nice to see a few before. Freya paused. Did she really? Let me see there. Freya paused. Did she still intend to climb out on the rocks? She'd been so sure before, certain it was the way, and everything had suddenly seemed to make sense. But then there was the feeling of plunging into the dark, the first excitement she'd felt in so long. She brushed off the top of the table with her hand again and sat on it. She brushed off the top of the table again and sat on it. Instantly, she felt cold wetness soaking the back of her jeans anyways. She brushed off the top of the table again and sat down, still feeling wetness soaking through her jeans. She looked up at the clouds again, and then realized she'd been slightly off. They'd shifted and she could see Taurus now. For a long time she gazed through the binoculars, breathing shallow, waiting. Okay, let's take a look at this paragraph. So, Freya paused. Did she still intend to climb out on the rocks? She'd been so sure before, certain it was the way. Everything had suddenly seemed to make sense. But then there was the feeling of plunging into the dark, the first excitement she'd felt in so long. She brushed off the top of the table again and sat down, still feeling wetness soaking through her jeans. She looked... The rifts in the sky had shifted, and she realized she'd been off before. Taurus was farther right. For a long time she gazed through the binoculars, breathing shallow and waiting. The cold seeped in, and she had to clench her jaw to keep her teeth from chattering. There were no sandwiches. There was no thermos of soup, no cigar, no father. A brilliant finger of light shot across the eye, a torrid. Look, Freya. Shooting stars, Freya said, and then she set the binoculars down on the table and let out a single sob. She put them back in the case and snapped it shut in case it rained afterwards. Then she walked towards the rocks. Every chapter should begin on a new page. Real talk. All right, what do we got here? So let's see. Freya paused. Did she still intend to climb out on the rocks? She'd been so sure before, certain it was the way. Everything had suddenly seemed to make sense. Yeah, you don't need all three of these. Okay. Freya paused. Did she still intend to climb out onto the rocks? She'd been so sure at the house, certain it was the way. But that was before the feeling of plunging into the dark, the first excitement she felt in so long. She brushed off the top of the table again and sat down, still feeling wetness soaking through her jeans. The rifts in the sky had shifted, and she realized she'd been off before. Taurus was farther to her right. For a long time she gazed through the binoculars, breathing shallow and waiting. The cold seeped in, and she had to clench her jaw to keep her teeth from shattering. There were no sandwiches. There was no thermos of soup, no cigar, no father. A brilliant finger of light shot across the eye, a torrid. Look, Freya, shooting stars, Freya said. Yeah. She set the binoculars down on the table and let out a single sob. She put them back in the kit. Squeezed her eyes shut and let out a single sob. She returned the binoculars to their case and fastened the clasp. Then she walked towards the rocks. All right. So that is chapter 5. What's our time at here? It's currently 7:18. I believe we began at like 6:15. I think today we're just going to do the one chapter. Let's see how long this next chapter is. Let's count these pages right here. No spoilers. Look away if you don't want to see what the fuck I'm doing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pages. I think we can edit 7 more fucking pages. Let's go for a twofer today. But yeah, I'm feeling. I don't know. So what's happening in this chapter? So this chapter is where she's what's twofer? I don't know what the fuck that. Oh, twofer. 2, 4. Oh, what? I got you. All right, let's drink a little bit more coffee. Yeah, this espresso is just not fucking powerful enough, man. Feels like just drinking coffee. And like a teeny little can, too. It takes a lot of fucking fuel to keep this creative jet engine going here. Yeah, let's do one more chapter. Okay, so here, chapter 4 is just like her kind of steeling herself for what's here. What do we learn there? We just have her getting out. Let me see. How important is this chapter? I guess we should do an analysis on it, because we got 97 fucking chapters. Other than the ones we've edited so far. We probably need to think a little bit about cutting some of these. But so here, we established the garage as a location here. There's some atmospherics in the lead up to the apex of the action, which I think happens next chapter. What do we learn about Freya here? We learn that she's sad. Oh. And so here we have she knows like a fair. This is okay. This is like some good character development here, because we learn that she knows a fair bit about astronomy. Which is solid, and that's like a good character trait, and one that I'd like to reinforce. So that's really important. Let me see. How do I? And I like some of the pieces of description. And I like that she opts not to pump up Lasse's tires. That's like such a small thing, but it seems really important. And I really like the description of the tires making like that hissing sound that paint rollers make. So yeah, overall there are like several reasons to include this chapter in there, even though there's not like a ton of action. It's just somebody riding their bike to a fucking park and making up their mind what they want to do. So yeah, I'd say that's a strong keep right there. I will probably never argue to delete a chapter though, and definitely that's one that I want to keep. Freya took her shoes off. She didn't want to slip in before she got to the deep part of the river and lose her nerve. Let's take off loser nerve. The mud of the riverbank was numbingly cold against her feet, and the water was black as oil in the moonlight. She stepped out onto the first rock and almost slipped, despite all her caution. The rocks were still slick from the rain, and there was mud sticking to her bare feet. She bent down and rolled up the legs of her jeans and dipped her feet into the river, shaking them to get the mud off. The water was cold enough to sting, and she wondered if she could really do it this way. The gun would have been so much quicker. Okay, that's a big old fucking paragraph right there. So Freya took her shoes off. She didn't want to slip in before she got to the deep part of the river. The mud of the riverbank was numbingly cold against her feet, and the water was black as oil in the moonlight. She stepped out onto the first rock and almost slipped, despite her caution. The rocks were slick from the rain, and there was mud sticking to her bare feet. She bent down and rolled up the legs of her jeans and dipped her feet into the water, shaking them to get the mud off. The water was cold enough to sting, and she wondered if she could really do it this way. Hmm. Well, is she talking about killing herself? Well, she might be thinking about it there. You know, I don't know about you, but I don't just bicycle out to a fucking river just to look at it. Freya took her shoes off. She didn't want to slip in before she got to the deep part of the river. The mud of the riverbank was numbingly cold against her feet, and the water was black as oil in the moonlight. The water was black as oil in the moonlight. She stepped out onto the first rock and, yeah, okay, so this is where we would have a new paragraph. And so I actually do this incorrectly for most manuscripts. I like to not indent the first fucking chapter. And I like to not indent the first paragraph in a chapter. And then I like to indent all subsequent ones. I think most editors would prefer that you just indent every fucking paragraph if you're going to indent paragraphs. I don't know. Maybe someday somebody will say something to me and I'll change my indenting ways. She stepped out onto the first rock and almost slipped despite her caution. The rocks were slick from the rain and there was mud sticking to her bare feet. She bent down and rolled up the legs of her jeans, then dipped her feet into the river, shaking them to get the mud off. The water was cold enough to sting and her sprained ankle hurt. She wondered if she could really do it this way. The gun would have been so much quicker. She climbed over to the next rock and to the next. The wind kicked up and a spray of leaves flew all around her, each settling onto the surface of the water and sailing off in the current. She climbed over to the big wedge-shaped stone at the center of Silas River and sat down, staring up at Taurus. A meteor shot by, bright enough to see with the naked eye. Make a wish. The memory struck her. It was Jane Yang that had said it, last December before Betty moved away. Randall had given the three of them a ride an hour north to catch the Geminids from the top of White Mountain. He'd set his own telescope up by the car and let them wander the mountain. Randall had given the three of them a ride. To catch the Geminids from the top. See, I don't want to say exactly where, because it's a fictional town, and White Mountain is like a very specific place. And I think this town has to be in like 3 or 4 different places in Maine at once for the way that things are described. So I'm just going to take out some of the time descriptions. So like, maybe you drove them 4 fucking hours to get to White Mountain. I think White Mountain is in potentially New Hampshire also. So yeah, we'll fudge some of that shit right there. The memory struck her. It was Jane Yang that had said it last December before Betty moved away. Randall had given the three of them a ride to catch the Geminids from the top of White Mountain. He'd set up his own telescope by the car and let them wander up the mountain together, giving each a set of his binoculars. Freya had taken the oldest and smallest pair. She'd seen the Geminids many times before and wanted her friends to have a better look. Betty had the Celestrons. She was the smallest of them, and they looked gargantuan when she held them against their eyes. Why would you do that? Freya had asked. Ah, that she does not get fucking capitalized. It's like it's part of the make a wish, she'd said. Why would you do that? Freya had asked, too seriously. Lass's contempt for superstition somehow sneaking out of her mouth. Why would you do that? Freya had asked, too seriously. Lass's contempt for superstition was somehow coming out of her mouth. She didn't know why she'd said it. Maybe she was just no, it's not. It's not better. No, you think we should add achy breaky heart? Whew, that's actually not a bad suggestion. Cause it's a really annoying song, and she's definitely headed down to the river and hang herself. I don't know, like God, that's a little cold hearted right there. Trab N. Yeah, I'll think about that one. But let me finish this sentence. Why would you do that? Freya had asked, too seriously. It was as if Lasso was speaking through her mouth, spewing her contempt for superstition. Spewing is too much. But I want something like spitting. Let's look up spewing. Spouting is like better than spewing. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky back. I feel like that guy is always fucking. Well, it's not sputtering, right? So we want something like where she's just being a cunt, the way that her mother is a cunt, right? So we want something that captures, like she's saying this thing in a bitchy way to whatever. And I think spouting is there. It's not exactly the right word. And she's not hissing. She's not mad or anything like that. She's got like this real supercilious stuff. Comets can't grant wishes, you know, like that fucking kind of thing right there. But I don't have the right word for it off the top of my head. There will be many more editing passes. Believe me. Like this edit that we're doing right here, where we're going to spend like 6 months on it, there will be 7 or so total edits of this novel before all is said and done. And I'll have to be involved in each one of them. Subsequent ones won't be as deep, but I will still have to review the entire 700-page manuscript every single time. By the end of it, I will hate this book like poison, because I'll just be so fucking oversaturated with it. But that's how it is, man. Got to do it. It's not going to do itself. It's just what you do when you see a shooting star. You make a wish. Maybe it comes true. Jane explained. Oh, that rhyme. Jane explained. Jane explained. All right. They're just comet dust. They can't grant wishes, Freya had said. Freya replied. Even though it was too dark to see Jane rolling her eyes, she could tell she was. It doesn't hurt to wish, Jane insisted. And she stood apart from them. She'd gone off. They're just comet dust. They can't grant wishes, Freya replied. Even though it was too dark to see Jane rolling her eyes, Freya was sure she was. It doesn't hurt to wish, Jane had insisted. She'd gone off after that and stood apart from them for a while. Later, when Freya wondered why she and Jane weren't friends without Betty, this was the night she remembered. Jane had been bored all night. She talked too much. She kept turning her binoculars at the woods to look for deer. She didn't care about the stars. Betty was quiet. She sat next to Freya and gasped quietly when 3 meteorites shot across the sky at once. Afterwards, she'd reached down and took Freya's hands and she didn't care about the stars. Betty was quiet. She sat next to Freya and gasped quietly when 3 meteorites shot across the sky at once. Afterward, she'd reached down and took Freya's hand and squeezed it, just for a moment. Freya had felt her heart soar in her chest. It was like there were... Jane had been bored all night. She talked too much. She kept turning her binoculars at the woods to look for deer. She didn't care about the stars. Betty was quiet. She sat next to Freya and gasped quietly. And gasped once when 3 meteorites shot, unquietly. Yeah, I want quiet. Betty was quiet. She sat next to Freya. I think let's just call them Geminids. It is the Geminids that we're looking at here, right? Yep. And Betty was quiet and attentive. She sat next to Freya on the ledge. On the ledge. And gasped when 3 Geminids shot across the sky at once. After, she'd reached down and took Freya's hand and squeezed it, just for a moment. Freya had felt her heart soar in her chest, like a choir suddenly singing inside of her. Freya had felt her heart soar, like a choir suddenly singing inside of her chest. Inside her chest. Why did she have to be the one to move away? In the middle of the river, Freya felt herself plunge. In the middle of the river, Freya felt the world plunging around her. Everyone she loved was gone. She laid on her back, staring up at the sky with the river rushing around her, and she felt herself shrinking while the cold seeped into her. She stared up at the scars and wondered what Betty was doing right now. Betty had gotten a C on it. Betty had gotten a C on a test in trigonometry at the new school, and her mother had taken away her computer and phone for the whole semester. Maybe once a week Freya would get a message, either from Betty's new friend June's phone, or an email sent from a library computer. Freya had been good about that. She always responded the same day, no matter how low she felt. She tried to keep her replies upbeat. She didn't want to lose Betty. But still, it was longer and longer between each email. They were just too far apart, and everything was slipping away. No, we can take out just about every instance of just in this story can be fucking removed. God. Freya sat up and stared down the river into the rapids, the water dark and swirling. Where the water roared and seethed. Rumbled, not roared. Betty would cry when she heard about this. Freya sat up and stared down the river into the rapids, where the water rumbled and seethed. Betty would cry when she heard about this, but she had new friends now, even if she was grounded and could only see them at school. People liked her better in Ohio. People liked her better in Wisconsin. It was a high-end private school for math and science, and she said she finally felt like she fit in, even though all the classes... It was a high-end private school for math and science, and she said she felt like she finally fit in, even though classes were really hard. Yeah, for like, it was a high-end private school, and she said she felt like she finally fit in, even though classes were really hard. Freya had tried to be happy for her, but there was a piece of her that wished Betty would say, "I hate it, and we're moving back." She wasn't going to move back. Jane wouldn't care if Freya died. Or maybe, let's reread that paragraph. Don't take shortcuts, man. Freya sat up and stared down the river into the rapids, where the water rumbled and seethed. Betty would cry when she heard about this, but she had new friends now, even if she was grounded and could only see them at school. People liked her better in Wisconsin. It was a high-end private school, and she said she finally felt like she fit in, even if classes were super hard. She said she felt like it was a high-end private school, and she said she finally felt like she fit in, even though the classes were really hard. Freya had tried to be happy for her, but there was a piece of her that wished Betty hated it there, that she would stand up to her mother and demand they move back. She wasn't going to move back. Jane wouldn't care if Freya died. Or she would care a little, but it would be in a nostalgic way, and she would Or she would care a little, but it would be in a nostalgic way. She would soak up the attention for her crew of dumb girls. Maybe she could parlay it into something, cash in her supposed grief for a date with someone hotter than her, or a better grade on a paper or something. It doesn't hurt to wish. Was Jane happy now? Did being popular and smoking pot and going to parties with guys on the basketball team make you happy? She tried to imagine herself hanging out with Jane's friends, pretending to care about sports, all of them trying to outdo the others, sounding dumber than the next, taking their mean little jabs at anyone outside of their circle. Was that what Jane had wished for that night? Okay, let's take a good hard gander at yon paragraph. Was Jane happy now? Did being popular and smoking pot and going to parties with guys on the basketball team make you happy? Freya tried to imagine herself hanging out with Jane's friends, pretending to care about sports, all of them trying to outdo the others, sounding dumber than the next, taking their mean little jabs at anyone outside of their circle. Was that what Jane wished for that night? Was that what Jane wished for that night? Freya scooted to the edge of the rock. She just had to lean forward and she would be in the water. She didn't want her last thoughts to be so petty. She laid back again, with her legs dangling over the edge, and two particularly bright meteorites streaked past in rapid succession. Then, for a long time, there was nothing, just empty space between the stars. So much nothing. So much nothing. It was time to go. She stood up and looked down into the black water and tried to jump in, but she couldn't do it. She was too... It It was time to go. She stood up and looked down into the black water and tried to jump in, but she couldn't do it. She really couldn't. It was more than just being afraid. It was like her body had mutinied and refused to carry out the order. She tried to shove herself over, the way she would force herself to dive off a high place, but it didn't work. It was hard to kill yourself. She'd come this far. She turned around on the rock and edged backward, little by little, until her heels were just at the edge. She could just move back, tiny bit by tiny bit, and she would eventually lose her balance and fall in. Her heart was pounding. It wasn't far down into the water, but it felt like she was standing at the edge of a huge cliff. She opened her eyes and took one last look at the moon, hanging pale and lonely in the sky. It had been part of the earth once, and now it was empty and abandoned. A barren void, with nothing left on it but a flag and some footprints, the landing module. A barren void, with nothing left on it but a flag and some footprints around the landing module. There was a brilliant flash overhead, the biggest fireball she'd ever seen, an intense blue-green flame. So the color of meteorites actually has a lot to do with their composition. So this one, which is ridiculously, there's like a lot of nickel happening in it. So I think I actually researched what color the fireball should be. There was a brilliant blue-green flash overhead, the biggest fireball she'd ever seen. There was a brilliant blue-green flash overhead, the biggest fireball she'd ever seen. An instant later, something struck the river upstream, hard enough to send a huge gout of water in the air. Freya flinched and lost her footing. For an instant, she was windmilling her arms, but she was too far over the edge, and she plunged into the water. The cold hammered the air right out of her, and instantly she knew she'd made an awful mistake. She'd fallen in backward, and river water shot up her nose. The current was swift, dragging her downstream, and she tried to swim against it, but she was in the rapids. A moment later, she was pulled under. The current was swift, dragging her downstream. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids, and a moment later she was pulled under. Everything was black and freezing. She couldn't tell what way was up. In a burst of raw animal terror, she kicked her legs hard and managed to pop. Okay, so stop. When you're reading an action sequence, there's like this huge, like, I'll read faster, but you're supposed to read slower so people can tell what the fuck is going on. There was a brilliant blue-green flash overhead, the biggest fireball she'd ever seen. An instant later, something struck the river upstream, hard enough to send a huge gout of water in the air. Freya flinched and lost her footing. For an instant, she was windmilling her arms, but she was too far over the edge, and she plunged into the water. Slower. The cold hammered the air right out of her, and instantly she knew she'd made an awful mistake. She'd fallen in backward, and river water shot up her nose. The current was swift, dragging her downstream as she choked. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids, and a moment later she and pulled under. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids and pulled under. Everything was black and freezing. She couldn't tell what way was up. In a burst of raw animal terror, she kicked her legs hard and managed to pop above the water. She gasped for breath, and then a moment later hit a rock and got turned around, and she was yanked under the water again. Pure terror propelled her. She fought to get air. She swam the wrong way, and her hands hit the rocks underneath. Then she hit another rock hard. Pure terror propelled her. She fought to get air. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to get up, but went the wrong way and was dragged along the rocks underneath. She was too frenzied to feel pain. Freya was gone. In her place was an animal that didn't want to die. She slammed into another rock and clung to it with all her strength. Her hands were so numb that she could barely hold on, and when she felt herself slipping, she kicked off and made for another rock, closer to shore. She couldn't make it. She was swept along. Everything inside of her was screaming. She managed to hook onto a slippery rock and scramble along it until there was a ridge of stone shallow enough to wade. Yeah, so that's a spot where we need to Yeah, she goofed big fucking time there. Yeah, it's actually not fun to be in a river in the middle of the fucking winter. Believe it or not. Oh, really? Silent Willow? Yeah, let me know. Let me know exactly where you're at. I have not personally drowned in a river, though I've spent a lot of time swimming in them. So if any of this doesn't track right to you, we're always looking for expert advice from people who have actually drowned in rivers before. So yeah, let me know. So I've been slammed under rocks before, and I can tell you, depending on the current, strength, and the sort of rock you're being slammed into, clutching it is not a thing. Yeah, so she does slip off of a bunch of. I mean, keep in mind this character needs to not die here. Um, if she dies here, it's gonna be real boring rest of the fucking book right there. So current swift. I have been thrown in many a rapid, and it's like very very. You'll see a little bit of what transpires afterward. But yeah, I mean it's a good point. It is like river rocks are like incredibly slippery. Even in the winter, there's like bullshit moss all over them. Oddly enough, only happen when you're thawing. Oh, see, this is a really good note. Extremities feel like they're burning before they go numb. Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, let's make that swap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I don't know jack shit about falling into icy water. So that is cool. All right. Yeah, look at this guy. Uh, dude, I follow you on TikTok. Huge fan. I had no idea what you scream. Well, what are you selling, Safeguard? Because I'm not on TikTok. Oh, them robots. Oh, this is really good. I like the idea of uh try to go with it because of a number of reasons. Uh avoid the other debris carried by the current. Huh. Uh Dick talk. Yeah, so in this particular case, we're just gonna invent a branch that's able to hook an arm around, and then she'll be able to fight her way to there. Yeah, it's super interesting there. Yeah, Silent Window. Shouts to that info about going. Yeah, so all really good stuff in the context of this story. Not as important as what's going to come next, and I definitely want it to be an active choice to fight against the surroundings rather than sort of like passively going limp and letting like the river carrier wherever the fuck there. Like this needs to be a fight for survival. Yeah. But let me get through this. Everything inside it. All right, let's go back to reading. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to get up, but went the wrong way and just was dragged along the rocks underneath. She was too frenzied to feel much. Yeah. Yeah, I like that much better. Oh, cool. Yeah, well, shout outs to coming over this. Yeah, my name is Zach. I'm an author of 5 published books, about 8 that are 8 total. This is my 8th novel right here. It's called GRAVID. It's about a young woman who obviously attempts suicide and finds a reason to go on again. And yeah, you can, if you're interested at all, if you go to zachzyz.com, like EPUBs and Kindle and shit of all my books are available for free. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank y'all for joining me there. We've been doing this this is the 4th or 5th day that we've been doing it. It will take 100 total days to edit this novel. The word count is about 200,000 words. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this. So a couple of things that I'm doing on the site are we do these editing streams, and I am taking input from the readers. Like I'm getting really great at like the thing about cold water, like feeling like it's burning rather than throbbing. Oh, fucking perfect. So I'm taking a lot of input like that. And what we're doing is we're posting a differential between the initial rough draft and the first draft after we do this editing process, so you can see where improvements have been made. I'm really excited about that differential thing. I mean, it's very nerdy, but I enjoy it. Yeah. So the EPUBs are free. You can also buy them on Amazon if you prefer a print edition there. I have like one audiobook at this time. I'm going to work on some other ones. Part of why I'm doing this reading aloud is to become a better narrator. And then I do a Friday night radio show for reprobates, which is most of the people that you'll see chatting around in here. They listen to the radio show, which has, to get a more accurate sensation, put a lot of freezing water in the bowl. And, oh, that's a really good note. Yeah, all right. Like the rhythm method. Well, I'm not going to do that right now because I need to finish editing this chapter. But I think that's a good note. I'm actually going to add that as a note. Okay. So I'm going to immerse my hands in freezing water and then try to grab a hold of a greased up Scotsman. Live on stream for money. Try typing, for example. Yeah, I think this is a spot where using the method, like method acting or whatever, would be useful. So let's go back to that. I like already, because as soon as you're like, it's like a burning feeling rather than whatever, that tracks. That feels more right to me. But we got to get through this segment here. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to get up, but went the wrong way and was dragged along. Okay, let's start here. The current was swift, dragging her downstream, and she sputtered and choked. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids and pulled under. Everything was black and freezing. She couldn't tell what way was up. In a burst of animal fear, she kicked her legs hard and managed to pop above the water. She gasped for breath, and then a moment later she hit a rock and got turned around and was yanked under again. Okay, so there we go. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to get up but went the wrong way and was dragged along the rocks underneath. She scrambled back to the surface, hurt, but too frenzied to feel it. Freya was gone. In her place was an animal that didn't want to die. She slammed into another rock and tried to cling to it, but her hands felt like they were on fire. Everything was slippery and she was ripped further. Yeah, that's not a good sentence. Okay. Okay. Jesus. There we go. Slowly, with every breath, feeling like she was being struck from behind. No, that's not. That doesn't track. Let's get her to the riverbank. Okay, so let's check some of these notes. Rocks have sharp edges, may cut like knives. Some of that's there. Ripped it down river, panic became strength, works as a short sentence. By the way, what clothing item? Also, it's punchy and has the impact of what's happening to her. She may need to strip and start a fire in order to avoid hypothermia. So we're not quite at the hypothermia stage, but that's covered in the next segment right here. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly. We haven't specified like the temperature that it is outside. But let's get, yeah, we'll review that entire segment after we do that. All right, so what do you want to, da, 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 da. Okay, I know already. Let's just start here. The cold hammered the air out of her, and instantly she knew she'd made an awful mistake. She'd fallen backward, and river water. She'd fallen in backward, and river water shot up her nose. The current was swift, dragging her downstream, and she sputtered and choked. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids and pulled under. Everything was black and freezing. She couldn't tell which way was up. In a burst of animal fear, she kicked her legs hard and managed to pop above the surface. She gasped for air, and then a moment later she hit a rock and got turned around, and she was yanked under again. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to get up. She tried to swim up, but went the wrong way and was dragged along the rocks underneath. She scrambled back to the surface. She was too frenzied to feel hurt. Freya was gone, and in her place was an animal that didn't want to die. She slammed into another rock and tried to cling to it. She tried to hang on, but her hands felt like they were on fire, and it was too slick. The current ripped her downriver. Oh, you're right. That does track wrong. Temperature-related adjective. And at river water shot up her nose. You know, when I've had water like shot up my nose or whatever, I have never felt the temperature at it. Like you would for some reason when like you like are driven under or whatever there, your first thought is like all those olfactory receptors are just like getting whatever's in the water. So I think if we did an adjective, it would be something like brackish there. But I do think that that's a good note, just in terms of like, it's a big deal when water like shoots up your nose. Maybe like, I think we use stinging elsewhere. Well, the brackish doesn't quite mean what's a word for you know how like river water is kind of alive in a way that, you know, like water from a bathtub is not. Two uses of but on first line of 44. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, brackish is terrible there, honestly. Now let's just go with murky for right now. I like the word murk. All right, so first page of 44, but twice. But, her hands, that's right. Yep, Good note. Thank you. Axle boost. Let's get back to it. The current was swift, dragging her downstream, and she sputtered and choked. She tried to swim against it, but she was swept into the rapids and pulled under. Everything was black and freezing. She couldn't tell what way was up. In a burst of animal fear, she kicked her legs hard and managed to pop above the surface. She gasped for air, and then a moment later she hit a rock and got turned around, and she was pulled under again. In a burst of effort, she kicked her legs hard and managed to, because I don't want to animal it up twice. She gasped for air, and then a moment later she hit a rock and got turned around and was pulled back under. Pure terror propelled her. She tried to swim up, but went the wrong way and was dragged along the rocks underneath. She was too frenzied to feel hurt. Freya was gone, and in her place was an animal that didn't want to die. Couldn't tell. She couldn't tell. Yeah, I think which way was up. That's a good note. Yeah, I know that you made that note earlier. Dragged along the. So we don't want jagged and we don't want sharp there. Let's just do jutting. She was too frenzied to feel hurt. She tried to grab onto it, but it was too slick, and her hands felt like they were burning. She bobbed to the surface, feeling the pull of her wet clothes dragging her down, and slammed into another rock. I wanted to get rid of bob to the surface. Oh, that's right. That's what I'm doing here. I think we're just gonna cut the whole everything inside her was screaming she was about to die. That shit's whack. Mm-hmm. Oh. Cool. That's much better. Well, it's not the river bed. The river's like slightly deeper than the bed. What she's on is like a big ridge of underground stone, so it's above the bed of this river. Coming in south. Whew. Mm-hmm. She was banged up and cut. Okay, so uh, kicking hard, Threa was thrown against an outcropping of stone and her arm hooked around a broken branch. She could barely hang on, but panic became strength. In a burst of adrenaline, she managed to work herself around it. I want something like she's like spiders her way around it there, but I'm not summoning it at the moment. And her feet touched bottom. You know, you're right. It does sound better. And her feet touched riverbed. The ridge of stone underfoot was only waist deep. She fought to make it closer to shore with water rushing all around her. With the river rushing around her. Yeah. Sobbing with each breath, she made it from stone to stone and reached the river's edge. Mm-hmm. When she got to the bank, she slipped, crashing on her hands and knees in the cold mud. On all fours, she clawed her way up the bank, through the brush to the trail. River water was streaming off of her, and each breath was a hurt, awful sound. Her teeth were chattering hard. What a stupid thing to do. Yet how glorious to have survived it. Yeah. Period at waist deep. Yeah, that should not be a compound sentence. So I like the sort of symbolism of like this reversion to an animal state of survival, and then she's on all fours, clawing her way up this riverbank, and then getting to the point where she can stand upright again. I really like the way that tracks. So I'm happy with that decision. Freya became aware. I don't think we need the keening sound in there. She couldn't tell how badly she was hurt. It was too dark to see on the trail. She probed with her hands, but the burning feeling had become throbbing numbness. Limping, she made her way to the clearing. The river had carried her a long way. The clouds had drifted overhead. Yeah, search for injuries with her hand. I don't like that wording either. I don't like probe. Yeah, probe with her hands is like wrong too. Mm. And like she felt herself. That's like, you know, what's like the like. Too dark to see on the trail. She ran her hands over herself, feeling for injuries, but the burning sensation. You can't use burning. No, that doesn't work. Yeah, you can't actually use burning sensation because people just think about fucking icy hot and syphilis. So yeah, those two words cannot be used together, sadly, because of the implication. There we go. That's better. She grasped at herself, trying to feel if she was injured, but the burning in her fingers had become throbbing numbness. Limping, she made her way to the clearing. The river had carried her a long way. Overhead, the clouds parted, bathing the clearing in moonlight. There we go. I like it. So, in the injuries right here, we would love for her to be like way more injured, right? But it becomes important later on that other people not know that she has tried to drown herself. So we can't have her hands too fucked up or whatever. In the original draft, she lost a bunch of fingernails trying to cling to the rock, but we had to edit that out because people notice if you're losing a bunch of fingernails. You can, oh shit. We've almost got 2 chapters done today, Neensy. Hell yeah. But we're there. Yeah, we're getting like a steady crowd of reprobates up in this. Shout outs to everybody paying attention to this thing. Her jeans were shredded. Her arm. I don't think that you can say. Okay, so this is really a stretch for Effie says it's getting interesting now. Oh shit. All the toe talk. He would love all that shit. Shout outs to Espresso. Had a meteor really struck right in front of her. Was she just well, she would know that it's a meteorite. Everything felt new and important. Had a meteorite really struck right in front of her? Was she just imagining it? Up the river from the rock she'd fallen off, she could see steam rising from the sandbar. A meteorite had indeed hit, hard enough to leave a crater. She could barely believe it. Soaked and freezing, she still had to go see. She waded out onto the sandbar, carefully planting her feet with each step. She had no intention of slipping back into deep water. The crater was 2 feet around, and it had filled in with dark water. Tentatively, she reached down, afraid it would be boiling hot, but it was just slightly warmer than the water around it. Bending down and groping in the pit, she felt it, a sphere about the size of a baseball, sunk arm deep into the sand. It was hot, but not too hot to handle. She dug it out and waded back to the shore with it, clutching it. Oh, so there's way too many its. Yeah, she's shivering hard here. We say that her teeth are chattering previously. I don't want to. She was soaked and shivering, but she had to look. Go look. I just had to look. Okay. Freya was soaked and shivering, but she had to look. She waded out to the sandbar, carefully planting her feet with each step. She had no intention of slipping back into deep water ever again. The crater was 2 feet. Huh? The crater had filled in with dark water. Tentatively, she reached down. Let's see. The crater had filled in with dark water. Tentatively, she reached down, afraid it would be boiling hot, but it was just slightly warmer. The water was only slightly warmer than the rest of the river. Yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm. I just had to look, having read the book. Okay, so the crater had filled with dark water. Tentatively, she reached down, afraid it would be boiling hot, but the water was only slightly warmer than the river. She groped in the pit and felt something hard. Bending down into the water, she closed her hand around it. It was round and smooth. She dug it out. A meteorite, a piece of space, right there in her hands. She could barely believe it. In the moonlight, it was dark and pitted, like a small cannonball about 3 inches across. She squinted at it in the moonlight. It was almost perfectly round. She was shaking again, and the finger with the lost nail, She was shaking again, and the lost toenails were throbbing with pain. And the lost toenails throbbed and stung. There's too much throbbing going on here. It's like a gay porno happening. Mm-hmm. Of all comparisons. Well, I'm not an aficionado of homosexual pornography, but I think if things are going to be throbbing anywhere, it would be there. I'm going to leave that comparison out of the book for now, though. Just for now. She was shaking again, and the lost toenails were stinging. I wonder what the most common... yeah. Like, she's definitely, period after stung. The missing toenails stung. Almost perfectly round. Freya struggled to get her socks and shoes back on and wedged the meteorite into the corner of the binoculars case, hoping it didn't scratch up the Celestrons. Slinging the case over her shoulder, she grabbed the handlebars of her bike. Celeste. Slinging the case. Yeah, I think it's a brand name, so it is capitalized. Oh, yeah, it's true. The toes are stinging, not the toenails, which are missing. That is a good note. Yeah, thank you for joining us on our writing adventure. So her shoulders were shaking and the toes with the missing nails stung. She needed to get peroxide on them. She had to get warm soon or she would get hypothermia. Freya struggled to get her socks and shoes back on and wedged the meteorite into the corner of the binoculars case, hoping it wouldn't scratch up the celestrons. Slinging the case over her shoulder, she grabbed the handlebars of her bike and prepared to walk it back up the trail. As she left the clearing, she looked back at the river, running black and swift in the moonlight as if nothing had happened. I almost died there. She hurried back up the trail, shivering. Okay, so that is chapter 6. I think we are cramming, or that was chapter 5. I think we are cramming too much shit into the back of chapter 5. How long have we got here? Oh, it's 9 a.m. I should have already left. All right, let me get the fuck out of here. Thank you all for joining me on this journey. Yeah, I do this every single day. Feel free to follow or like or subscribe. I have a Twitter, ZachZYZ or whatever. Yeah, like definitely, I think that's a good note. All right, let's, here, let's do a, I'm not satisfied with the completion of this chapter, but I do have to go teach high school. So so yeah, this is it's been a good session. I like where we got. Normally we were only getting 1 chapter a day. If we can get 2 a day, we'll finish much quicker. And most of the chapters are about 7 pages long, but there are 100 of them. So thank you so much for all of your comments and stuff like that. Again, all of my books are for free. I make enough money. I don't need to charge for them. So if you go to www.zachzyz.com, you can check them out. Some of them are really good. I always recommend that new people start with either Hawks at the Diner if you want something modern, or Survival Mode if you want something science fiction. And and then yeah, man. It's been super fun. We're going to continue on this process. I will be here every damn day. And thank you so much for being on. It's so much more fun to do editing with other people involved in the process. Otherwise, I am just fucking miserable. I hate editing. All right, y'all. Y'all be good.